I really have wrestled with why am I doing this. It starts being fun, then it's fun with consequences, and then it's just the consequences. Most people would have gone for a black coffee at the machine. I rang a dealer.
We live among you. Among you.
Yes.
In fact, it could be the lawyer working on your case. It could be the doctor working on your body. It could be like we are everywhere.
And then I also did something on cocaine and lost every single one of my university friends with one act.
James,
Hello.
you're here.
I am here.
Welcome to Class A People.
Thank you. It's a
Now-
real honour to be on, you know.
No, well, I was honoured because you. This is how we met,
Yes.
virtually.
Yes.
You were on Radio London,
Yes.
which is a show that you.
It's 15 minutes once a month. I go on and talk about social media and technology. And I was saying how in a world of media fragmentation, there's stuff that can help anybody. And I've said on that before that I'm in recovery. And I said, I've fallen in love with a podcast called Class A People. And I've been honest, I was looking for thanks James, because I still need the love.
Yeah.
And I
Feed
still
me,
need
feed
the.
me.
Yes,
Yeah.
completely. And I sent it to you and said, hope you like it. And then I think I chased you up.
I was
or I missed
elated,
you.
and I then, classic
then-
ADHD, forgot to actually reply
Bless
saying
you.
thank you, and was too busy trying to screen record it to get it onto my
Oh,
socials.
bless you.
And then we did. No, then you spoke to someone else, and now you're here.
I'm here. And
You're
I'm
here.
so pleased.
I'm
Yeah.
so pleased.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get the gushing stuff out the way later, but this is a really important part of my recovery. I mean that.
Thank you.
And I really have wrestled with why am I doing this?
Yeah. Okay.
The nice reasons,
Yeah.
service,
Yes.
that important word, you know, and we'll go on to, I'm sure I am in the brooms, so I do work a 12-step process. I need to be really careful because a huge part of my life, my addiction and my recovery is resentment and bitterness. And weirdly, if I'd have done this when I first asked, you know, said, let's get together, let's meet up, if there's anything I can do, I think it would have been a shit show.
Why?
Because still now, I wake up and I want to right wrongs. I still now wake up and if a former colleague who used to work for me who I don't like very much gets promoted on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
I go, the world's against me, that's unfair.
Yeah.
And
But
go on.
what the programme does, right, is it brings you awareness to that.
Yes.
But at the same time, we are human beings.
Yes.
And I'm exactly the same.
Good.
Exactly the same. You know, I'm
Yes.
just like, and it's that being in self, but it's the fact, and sometimes it annoys me that I'd work that program because I'm like, just let me be even if I'm just going to be a bitch in myself about that person who I don't like, who did something wrong to me, let me have it.
Yes.
And the program teaches you to hand that over.
I've recently, the other thing I need to be careful of talking to you and cut through the nonsense, cut through the bluster, is I've been in therapy for quite a long time. And some of that's really positive.
Yeah.
Some of that means you speak in less emotional ways, almost management term, a helicopter view. But I need to be really careful that I'm not analysing the process, that I'm sort of in the moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're
'Cause
here for you and your story.
completely.
That's what we're here for.
Yes,
There's
exactly.
the thing about Class A people, there's no catching anyone out. There's no
Yes.
clickbait. There's nothing.
Yes.
It's your story. And then
Completely.
we just, have a laugh, talk about some bad times.
Yes.
Of which we've all got. Because
Yes.
we did not, when we first started drinking, think, I'm going to be an addict.
This is a cliche, but somebody says it starts being fun, then it's fun with consequences, and then it's just the consequences.
Yeah.
And that is so true
The
on my
progression
journey.
of it as well, I think, when you come out of it is so interesting to look at because it's everything. It offers all your insecurities at the start, but you don't know they're your insecurities. And then by the end, you didn't even have what you started with. You are so stripped of any personality.
Yes.
Gone.
Yes.
And you're known usually to everyone else as the life and soul. Now you're soulless and lifeless.
It's amazing when you meet other addicts and you think, because you think you're special,
Yeah.
and you think you're not like anyone. I
Or
remember
the worst addict.
Yes.
And you've done the worst things.
Well, also imposter syndrome is such a big part of my life. And then the irony of when you become an addict, you then have imposter syndrome because you've not taken the right drugs.
So
you've
true.
not taken enough.
Yeah,
You've not come from a broken home.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, I don't really fit in. I'm
Yeah.
not a proper, so.
You listen, I get the comments all the time. It's like, try some heroin and crack and then you're a real addict.
Completely.
It's like, oh my God, we're so uneducated.
Yes, yeah.
And, but you still had a job. It's like, yes, we live among you. Among you. In
Yes.
fact, it could be the lawyer working on your case. It could be the doctor working on your body. It could be like, we are everywhere.
Yeah, completely.
And masters of manipulation, by the way.
Oh,
So,
huge. I mean, that's one thing is I've got my own business. I describe myself as the world's most reluctant entrepreneur because I sort of ended up being the boss.
but you love being able to say, I've got my own business.
Yes, I do.
Of course.
Yeah, no debate.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
ego is a huge part of my story.
Yeah.
My character being involved in my work is a huge part of my story. But I would have been fired if it wasn't my own job.
Yeah.
That is, if it wasn't my own business, I
100%.
should say.
When you start to be able to run your own time, dangerous.
Yes.
And, cancelling the meeting, rearranging, lying,
Well, we're jumping about all over the place.
Yes,
Oh,
so
go on.
Let me start how we
you
usually
lead.
do. I do, as you know,
Yes.
start with the childhood. Because I
Yes.
think it's important. Because a lot of us never realised that trauma is valid from bullying at school or feeling left out. It's not always just the parents getting divorced and these big, major, massive events. And even if you haven't had those trauma, if you were sad at a time in your life, that is valid.
Yeah.
So would you say that, now you can pinpoint some of those elements?
Yes. I think it's funny. I can definitely see my childhood was fairly idyllic, countryside, in Oxfordshire. I was the eldest of 4 siblings, so attention was
shared love.
Yeah, completely. My dad worked his arse off. I mean, we were. I need to be careful that I don't come across as a snob, but
If you are, that's all right.
We were such new money.
Okay.
We were McDonald's for Sunday lunch
Yeah,
growing
okay.
up, and then we used to go and play on the bike bells in Halfords afterwards, and that was kind of a Sunday day out.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no. Radio 4 came into my life much later on.
Yeah.
Red wine came into my life
Yeah.
much later
Okay.
on. So it was very, and then my dad did incredibly well by working so hard. And eventually he did really well and quite a lot of money came in. My family moved to America and left me to live with my best friend at my A-level. So God, I got awful A-level results as a result. But childhood was good. I mean, to give you a flavour, my nickname from my 2 brothers, and this pinpoints it to the 1980s, was Thick Freckly Yob.
Oh,
Now,
nice.
I love my brothers.
Of course.
Still love them now.
Yeah.
But it gives you a flavour of just the
Yeah.
cut and thrust. And I always say this, as a family, until relatively recently, I think my mum died 7 years ago. So it's always tough talking about my mum in negative ways, because obviously whenever anybody goes, you look for the positives. And she was amazing. I mean, making my mum laugh was what I lived for. She was incredible. And funnily enough, coming here, because the hospital she was at for a few years isn't far from here.
JR.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was born there.
Yeah. Oh, were you?
Yeah.
At Oxford Station today, sorry, I didn't know whether we could talk about location and stuff, but I had a moment because the only time I came to Oxford, I'd run in a cab and get the cab
How
to John
funny is
Radcliffe, and it was just this is awful. So it was a real, So I love my mum, I love my dad.
And we do, right? We
Yeah.
do. We love our parents, but we were chatting about this just before the camera started. And it is hard to take them off the pedestals because we feel that they did the best they could with the tools they have. Then you go on this journey and you become basically an adult. Basically, I would say when you come out of addiction, you got to grow, you learn to live kind of the age that you actually are.
Yes.
And you do have to take it's not about giving the responsibility to them, it's just about understanding some things.
Yes.
And
I'd
that
agree.
doesn't mean we don't love them.
I think the key
Like,
themes...
can I just say, when you're saying about your dad there, about how hard he worked,
Yeah.
which was amazing and it gave you the money, but did you have time with your dad?
We lived in Oxfordshire and he had a job in Leeds for 2 years. So a long way of saying he was up before everybody so not loads. I remember when the football was on a Sunday afternoon, me and my brother winding him up and getting in the way, and that causing him a little bit of aggro. I remember, to be fair to him, we went to Cubs and he was a Cub leader. I mean, it was so out of character for him to give back in that way, but he did. So, and yeah, so we did get time, and we had amazing holidays, and so it wasn't, there was nothing inherently wrong. I think the key themes that do play into my later life were not being heard, a sense of injustice, and that's a perceived sense of injustice. I used to have a bedroom, this when I was about 13 or 14, and there were a load of beer bottles and cigarette butts left in the cupboard in my bedroom. And my mum and dad gave me a huge telling off. But it wasn't me, it was my brother. It wasn't until my mum actually died, it was more or less on her deathbed that I said, Mum, you do know it wasn't me with the cigarette butts and the beer bottles.
Just to let you know.
Yeah, it really was. So that sense of injustice. Now, I think everybody has that to a degree, but it's still that kind of childish, it's not fair, throwing my toys out the pram.
But I think of being one of four, you know, that's a lot of you there.
Yeah, completely.
You got to hold your own, really.
I mean, funnily enough, bless my mum, she said to my wife, been married for 15 years, and my mum said to my wife once, when my son was 8, God, he's young, isn't he? And my wife said, yeah, of course he is, he's 8. It's like, well, when my 2 were 8, I thought they were so grown up. I'd more or less moved on to the next one by then. Yeah. And it's just a different...
It is, but again, it's worth acknowledging.
Yeah. And then the only other thing I'd say about my family, and whether this came from being proud of being alternative, whether this came from just all wanting to have a laugh, as a family, we were a lot more likely to say fuck off to each other than I love you. And sometimes fuck off with great affection.
Means I love you.
Yeah. And I would take the piss out my mum and, oh, fuck off, James.
Yeah.
But
with no I love you as well. It's a bit like...
And then the other thing is, and everyone talks about, look, it's my truth. I remember once I was asked, did your dad ever say he was proud of you?
Yeah,
and
it's a big one.
I said to this person with the utmost confidence, never, not once. And I saw this person a week later and I thought, I've thought about your question. He says it pretty much every time I see him. But it's funny that my head defaulted to not once. Yeah. So I don't know why, but that not being heard, the unfairness, the injustice did play a part. And then the other thing about my childhood was class clown is overused, but wanting to make everybody laugh was huge.
Did that come from originally? Did you remember finding that? Because I was bullied from 7, and then that final year of school, it was it was so extreme. I went from being the most unpopular to the most popular because I figured out how to make people laugh at my own expense, by the way. This was not, and I still don't know if they were laughing at me or with me, I'm not sure, but anything was better than what was going on previously to that.
Yeah, so self-depreciating humour came into my life a bit later. Yeah. And you're right, it just disarms everyone. If you say it first, there's no way anybody else is going to say it. And then you're fine, you're covered. Yeah. With me, I remember wanting to make a difference and wanting... It was never...
Attention, maybe.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Because you were one of 4, and that's probably quite...
I mean, I'll give you a prime example.
Go.
I was always awful at football and objectively rubbish. Yeah. And primary school, I remember once wanting to be the referee. And clearly my thinking was, well, they have a role. Yeah. It's a role that can't be competed with. Yeah. You know, there's only one
beaten by another team.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was a key
it's
central...
it's the rule.
Yeah. So I remember really campaigning for that. Yeah. So, I mean, look, not unhappy.
No.
Secondary school, not hugely academic, although relatively bright, if that makes sense.
Yeah, not book smart.
No, not not good results, but and this is bad, and I'm pretty ashamed of this. I can be extraordinarily lazy. I mean, I can quite easily do. I've heard you talk elsewhere about hyperfocus, about wanting to overachieve. I've never had that. I really, the only thing that motivates me, and this is probably quite toxic, is ego, really, and wanting to be successful, whatever that means. So I never worked particularly hard.
Is that because it came easy to you, or just because you quite simply just weren't interested and couldn't be bothered?
Interesting, a bit of both.
Could you always just get by?
Yes, completely.
Yeah, okay.
Completely.
Right.
But then the one thing that happened when I went on to do my A-levels at secondary school was I got on very well with the public speaking and debating teacher.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Well, there we are.
Yeah.
And it, honest, without saying it, it flew. It was regionals, nationals. I won the World Public Speaking and Debating Championship internationally,
I feel
A17.
I feel honoured.
Well, it's a funny story. I ripped off a speech from somebody else and an Eddie Izzard routine.
Did
and
you?
can now go onto the website and it says winner that year. And the year I won it, there's a blank because retrospectively I was disqualified. Yeah,
I once
because of plagiarism.
I was telling my mum this story literally the other night because we were trying to figure out sort of when she noticed that I would potentially have ADHD because I was diagnosed late, and I was telling her this story that we had to write a poem for English, right? And I hadn't done it.
Yeah.
So I took it upon myself to write out an Avril Lavigne song. Obviously, it got picked because it was fantastic for my age. And he was called Mr. Haslab, I think it was Mr. Haslab. And he said, and I'm very proud to say that, Hannah, I would like you to stand up and read out your poem to the class. Obviously, all the females in there are going to know that this is going to be an Avril Lavigne song. Gosh. It's also quite dark, the lyrics, when you just have them written out.
Yeah.
And afterwards, he said, I just think it's fantastic. He said, but we're going to have to call your mother. I mean, there must be some things going on here that is just awry. And I said, no, I'm just going to really creative imagination.
Well, the other thing that I wanted to be centre of attention. I was quite an orchestrator of stuff. So later on it would be I would organise the parties, the after parties. At primary school and secondary school it was let's all do this, come on, let's, and I was a leader of people. But the other thing, and I've not thought about this until just now, is there was an element of delusion in my childhood. I remember when I was probably 6, I used to do judo practice at the end of the road, and I told certainly friends, probably family, that the television were coming to film it. It was complete bollocks.
I had this in abundance. Over-exaggeration.
Yeah.
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 I think it's that fantasy.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's also, I don't know if you've ever had a really fucking embarrassing, usually a sibling, when you're mid-story and you're doing the over-exaggerating and they go, it didn't happen like that.
Yes.
Awful.
Yeah. Well, it's in nicer
but
times.
It's storytelling, I think.
Yes, it is.
That's
Storytelling is it.
I find that it was for
completely.
me growing up. It was like, I've got their attention and I need this big finisher, you know? Because everyone's looking at me.
Yeah. And I think that plays into my life now in, you know, everybody, there's a real toxic turn of phrase that I've adapted for myself and I'm trying to reframe it in my mind. But my ideal in my late 20s and early 30s, I wanted to be everybody's favourite dinner party guest. That was my goal. And look, we weren't 50, we were 30, so we didn't go to many dinner parties, we went to nightclubs and bars, but still. And I used to write the anecdotes I was going to tell people on my hands.
Really?
I would have to be so coked up in order to get through them all. And it's so much pressure on myself as well.
And no one else is expecting that from you.
Completely.
Yeah, it's interesting that.
Yeah, yeah.
I have elements of that in my personality for sure. The over-exaggerating, you know, but always more because I wanted the laugh, the big laugh. Yeah. And also I knew it sounded better when I told it, you know? And I knew I'd give it my, you know, if there was an accent in there, I'd be doing it.
Yes. Yeah. It was so, I mean, it's just like a drug, that laughter, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember I told a joke once that got an entire school hall laughing.
Yeah.
And it was a long session about exam etiquette. And the GCSE and the A-level students were in the same hall. And the teacher spoke for about an hour, get there on time, don't cheat, stuff like that. And at the end, has anybody got any questions? Put my hand up straight away. Yes, Erskine. And I said, where did you get your tie? The whole hall hilarious. I think I'd floated for about the next week on that adrenaline and that buzz.
Yeah.
It was so important.
I always used to think, classic like sesh chat.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that there's certain things that will just come up.
Yeah.
And there was like something about if you were gonna be the god of the world, some crap about being in charge of the world or something.
Yeah.
And obviously people would expect you to say something quite empowering. And I just said, the potholes, we've got to get them sorted. And I just remember that being this, everyone just laughed. And I was like,
yeah.
it is. It's that validation
And
that maybe you haven't had.
Sorry to interrupt. Would you have greatest hits as well? So you go back to the... So I would...
Oh my, retell, like the story.
Yeah, and if there was different crowds, the pressure of... I'd also, in that delusion, have to remember, I've told them it was 8 people, I've told them it was 6 people, I've told them that story, I've not told them that story, and that kind of, that was a big part of it.
It's not, I think lies is too strong, but it's the reinvention of the reality of the story that you've accentuated.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I get it wrong with this group, I don't know if I've told that. So what if someone, because that humiliation for me was like the worst thing.
Yes.
If someone, your mum growing up, stop showing off.
Yes.
That was just, I hated that.
I always used to pride myself on having an incredible memory. And lots of that was because Coke never made me lose my memory, booze did. And
same.
so, and a friend once called me out on it, and forgive me, uproariously middle class, but we did live near there. We went to Henley Regatta every year. And a dear friend of mine once said, can you remember what happened at Henley Regatta in 2003? And I went, right, well in 99 that happened, 2000 that happened, 2002 that happened, and there was a gap. And I couldn't remember. And he said, do you know why you can't remember? I said, no. I said, that was the year that you fell in the river and went home in a bad mood. And literally, the negativity and the humiliation, I'd blocked it out my mind. Isn't that fascinating?
The brain, it's a most remarkable thing, but compartmentalising is wild. I know you're further into your sobriety journey than I am.
Yes.
The lady who I've just interviewed prior to you was 10 years in. Only yesterday she was swimming. That's what she does for her, And a flashback came back to her when she was at nursery. The things that come back to you, it can be hard, but it shows you how much you've just put that over there.
Yeah.
See you later.
Yeah.
But you don't know you're doing it.
No, completely.
So, we'll get on to memories and things like that, I'm sure. But when you then left school, was there a set plan?
No, there was a plan I tried not to go to university for a year so I could have a gap year and basically just work in a pub.
And we're drinking?
I was drinking. We did start drinking quite early, but not what I would term, I guess we were 14 or 15.
Same, 13, yeah.
And we were going to the pub most weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, that was incredible. The pubs would let us in every week except once a month when the police would check. And that was the week we had to go to the pub.
Always reminds me of like Hot Fuzz.
Yes, completely.
Birthday.
So I was drinking. I smoked a bit of weed, but I've never been good on downers. Weed particularly has just done nothing for me except put me to sleep. So it wasn't really a big thing. So yeah, went to university. I was a student in Liverpool. I was on a media and cultural studies degree that felt right. I put quite a lot of time into the student radio station because that's what I thought was going to be my plan. And sort of was my plan until I was blinded by a bit more money in my 20s. And I had a fairly unremarkable university time. It was great. And then a couple of things happened. During one Easter holidays, I came back and I was at a party with school friends. And that's when someone gave me my first line. And I know for a fact they won't know that that was my first line because I made out I'd been doing it at university. and I hadn't.
Interesting.
I think I was more in love with the idea of doing it than with it at that stage. So did a line, and it was fine. I didn't have that moment that lots of people have where I must have more of this.
No.
I think I might have had 2 that night and then ignored it. And then...
Well, you don't have any expectation of it, do you?
No, completely.
You don't know yet that you're going to meet yourself.
No. And then I also went to Cream nightclub and took a couple of pills one night. And pills play a part in my addiction.
Yeah.
But this was... Nothing's positive, but this didn't feel problematic or negative.
No. Yeah.
But that, I mean, I suppose the point I'm
But
making...
also not even bothered.
No,
Yeah.
I was quite a late starter is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. This wasn't until I was 20 or 21.
Yeah, I was the same.
In my last year at university.
Yeah.
And it didn't really play a part in... It certainly wasn't a regular thing.
No.
It was once in a while. And then I moved to London. And then I got quite heavily involved in cocaine. On a Friday and Saturday night, so it was compartmentalised, but I used to enjoy it a lot, and then I also did something on cocaine and lost every single one of my university friends with one act.
Which was?
It's horrible. I stole, this may make me cry, because I stole a friend's phone at a wedding. He knew my university friend. I then text my university friend as if I was him, and we had what the kids may call text sex of some description. And I've no idea where that came from.
Were you high?
Yeah. Oh, high as a kite.
Yeah.
And forgive me, we've only just met. Horny.
Yeah,
and,
no, fine.
And I also was quite a good friend of hers, but I think there was a real belief within me that I didn't stand a chance.
Yeah.
And I think the only way I stood a chance was by being someone else. And
Never thinking, obviously, of the betrayal of the friendship, just testing it. But these are the things that we,
And I remember my friend, who's still a dear friend to this day, and I'm very lucky to have him. And weirdly, I'm working step 9 at the moment, and he's on my list of making amends too for
I'm
that.
in the middle of it.
And I never spoke to her again.
How did that all come out? How did it come out? How did they figure it out?
I think she texted him the next day, and he said, "What are you talking about?" And I never saw my university friends again. I'd only...
You probably didn't want to. No, you probably did.
I mean, yeah, I saw one in a pub about 8 years later, but it was a real... I mean, I should have learned, because I was only 21, 22 when that happened. But I mean, what a betrayal of 2 friends. What a betrayal of 2 sets of friends. What an explosive moment. But God, I didn't learn anything from it. I mean, I really just put it down to what a dreadful thing I've done. And it's horrible. I mean, the intimacy there and the false intimacy and God, so it was a horrible thing to do.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like when we think back to the first bad things we did on drugs, still managed to do a good 10-year stint.
Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah.
Because when we were doing them, we liked them and they were good to us.
Yes.
My God, the first beginning stages. So just...
And it's funny, I mean, look, we need some light in amongst the tragedy. I had a dealer that lived in Scotland that sent me my drugs in a candle. So I spent a lot of time sawing off the end of a candle.
That seems really extreme,
It
considering
was really,
you lived in London.
I
Did
know.
you just love his gear?
No.
Oh, no, you loved the fact that you...
No, I just wasn't yet on the regular scene yet.
Okay, fine.
He was someone
you were
in
all right having one that was a bit further away because you didn't need it.
Exactly. And this was kind of early steps.
Okay.
I then moved back in with my mum and dad. Here's something that will just... This is massively drugs related, but this is such a me story.
Go.
I was asked by a friend, can I give them a lift to the airport?
Yeah.
And I said, of course, no problem. And it was no problem, because my driving test was at midday that day. And they didn't need a lift till 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, brilliant.
So I did my drive, so just not wanting to let anyone down.
Yeah. Okay.
Was
So people pleasing is big in your story.
So huge. So did my driving test. Even though my driving instructor was driving the car when we got back to my mum and dad's house, he dropped me off. And I remember, I could picture my mum. She put 2 thumbs up. I put 2 thumbs up. And I gave my friend a lift to the airport. I came back from giving my friend a lift to the airport, having failed my driving test.
Right, okay, I was just going to say.
Never passed. And then I remember my mum said, and it was awful, and this really, there are parallels with addiction about living lies and living with a weight. My mum said, so good now you've moved home and that you can drive, because you can give your little sister a lift to school every day now. Oh my, and I couldn't tell my mum. And I was having driving lessons in secret for about 6 months. And the web had just rolled and rolled and
But
rolled.
really, that all started with you not wanting to let someone down.
Exactly.
Have you found along your journey with things like that, that's where, I don't know if you have anger in your story, but like, that's where you can get that real sense of injustice because, but I was doing it for the right reasons.
Injustice is such
huge.
It's also quite a toxic word. The other pompous turn of phrase I like to use is moral indignation, because I think it's pomposity that needs pricking, right?
Yeah.
You can look for an enemy every day, and God, do I do that still?
Yeah.
I mean, it can be anything.
Like, how can I make myself unhappy today?
Yeah, how can
I'm going to inflict it on myself.
Yes, and whether that's a customer service rep at a store, whether that's someone at a supplier at work, I will actively look for somebody to make myself less happy and
waste your energy on.
Completely.
Yeah.
Somebody described it recently with, if you're in a war and you've got goggles on that can only find the enemy, you need to take the goggles off to see all the friendly faces around you. And
but also it's that thing of like, and it's very addict brain like to focus on negative thoughts.
Oh yes.
You know, like one bad comment, one bad this.
Completely.
Amongst all of the good.
Yes.
Or you have the option to go and be good, to have the good, or deviate down onto the bad.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
And revel in it.
Yeah. And that's often how I think of friends. That's often how I think of people.
Are you quite cynical?
It's really funny. I'm jumping around all over the place.
We do that all the time.
Fine.
No, don't worry.
I had
ADHD and addiction, that's why I put it in the podcast title. So you can never be prepared.
So I had a business that was doing really, really, really well.
Yes.
And it was going amazing. And it was at the forefront of the industry. And it fuels my ego.
This is the digital
This was the influencer marketing business. And it was great. And we met incredible clients. We got deals with the Telegraph, TripAdvisor, every big media agency in town wanted to work with us. And we had all of these contacts and I was there at the front end working hard. And the business went bust. And the business went bust because we were over-investing in technology.
Okay.
And I would say this, wouldn't I? But still, my business partner was in charge of the tech, I was in charge of the other side. So I did blame him.
Yeah.
And I got to a phase where I said, I don't think I can work with him again after the business went bust, because it crippled my ego, that business going bust.
That's a massive high to a big crash though, isn't it? It's not like you just did all right.
Yes. We were going places, yeah. And my business partner said, okay. And there was a loan in the business on my house. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll pay off the loan as long as the other business that we have, you won't have any shares in that either. 6 months later, I meet my then former business partner for a coffee. And he's asking loads of questions about the business. And I said, you're asking quite a lot of questions considering you don't own any of the business. He said, but I do own it. I said, what do you mean? Well, I own 55%. I'm like, and I hadn't got anything in writing. And I'd worked with this man for 10 years. And
so disappointing, stuff like that.
Right. I threw my coffee at him. I was childish.
Understandable.
Stormed out. And I remember thinking, I've trusted this person.
Yeah.
I'd worked with him for 10 years. We weren't friends before. But the reason why I say that in response to your "Are you cynical?" Almost no, but then I look for social proof to be wronged.
Yeah.
And when I find that social proof, I really sweat it. I mean, that made me literally cry.
Yeah.
It made me cry about 10 years of friendship.
Yeah.
It made me cry about being naive and not being grown up enough to have done all the right paperwork because I trusted him.
Yeah.
It then made me cry when I gave him a small amount of money just to get him to go following a litigious process. I mean, it wasn't even that much money. It was like, but it just made me feel so small and so useless and so, and the worst thing, and I don't think my dad
Embarrassed,
would mind.
I think.
Embarrassed is a really good word.
Yeah.
My dad said to me a long time ago,
Yeah.
in business, everyone's an arsehole. And I was desperate to prove him wrong.
I had exactly the
Go
same
on.
thing with my interiors business, and my dad said, you've got to take the emotion out of it. And I hate it when people say that, especially if you're the owner of the business.
Yes.
Especially if you have no one else that works there yet.
Yeah.
So it is me. I am the antithesis of this business.
Yeah.
So I will be emotional about it, because if someone's going to be complaining about said business, it's on me.
Yeah.
It is all me.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't get my head past it. And I had a situation with a very wealthy person who I worked for, and who completely let me down. They just didn't pay me, basically, and I didn't do my due diligence along the way. You know, I had the original contract for the deposit of the design fee. They paid it, and by the time I'd done the rest of the job, no contact whatsoever, none, gone. And
that plays into everything. It plays into insecurity.
I just feel like an idiot.
It plays into not being successful and the imposter syndrome. Oh, I was never cut out to run a business anyway.
Yeah.
Is what
but
it makes
also
you
the
think.
expectation that other people have that on me, because I am just so erratic, and and it's so funny because my mum actually kept saying to me, she was like, "You've really got to remember to send that follow-up invoice. You've got to remember to send that." And I was going, "These are the richest people I've worked for so far.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a problem." I mean, they're multimillionaires and wouldn't pay me. I mean, it was $3,000, but it's like still. And then you have that thing in your head of like, but it's only three. It's not only three. I'm a small business owner, and then it's the injustice, and it's the power of them and versus me. And they
Power's another really important word.
Yeah.
A perceived power imbalance makes me feel scared, literally unsafe. It makes me feel small. It makes me feel like I'm failing. Yeah. It's
I think when someone's above you in all of those levels, like they knew that they would have. My dad said they would have known from the very beginning that they were going to do what they were going to do, probably because you were so young and naive, and they knew that giving you that project, you weren't far enough established really to do a project like that.
Yeah.
But they gave it to you because they knew they'd get every fucking ounce of you out of it.
Completely.
And they actually emailed me and said, if you carry on with this, we'll make it known to all of our friends in the whole of the Cotswolds that we're not very impressed with the work that you've done. Now, if you're saying that to somebody who's a year into business, and you got my type of clientele,
yeah.
and I think you've got daughters,
yeah,
and
completely.
it does blow your mind.
Yes.
Because when I first met them, they were charming personified, and that does create cynicism.
Completely.
Is that the right word?
Yeah, cynicism, definitely.
Because you second guess that.
I'm really lucky because I suppose the other defining characteristic of my childhood and then my life to this date is just how incredibly lucky I've been with dear friends around me. So even the friend that I mentioned then, I would still count as a very dear friend. I've had the same best friend since I was 4 years of age. I've met two people, the ushers at my wedding, such good friends. So they've seen me be a prick. They've seen me be an arsehole. They've seen me feel small. So I'm really lucky to have that. But yes, there's an element of mistrust that thinks who's going to fuck me over next, and lots of it's unfounded.
Yes, and I don't think it would ever be with. I'm the same. I've had the same best friend since I was 13, and it's not really with that, but it's the new people I meet.
Yes.
Because it's the same with I was telling you the story earlier about this when this first started. That kind of thing. It's like people will tell you, and I struggle with it because I know that I don't do that. Yeah, I've got a lot of bad things going on, and I've done but there's we've also got certain characteristics that we just don't do.
Yes.
And I buy into someone.
Yes.
If you're showing me you, and I'm showing you me, because I've never not doing that. It's kind of like, I don't know, you just feel a bit like, or if you're good with people, or you think you're good with people, and you think you've got them straight away, and then they show you a different, you're like, fuck.
There's also, as an individual, there's a weird thing, and I don't know whether this is unique to addicts or unique to, but the fact that you're playing a part yourself makes you wonder whether other people are just playing a part.
That's very true. It's, yeah, like one of the guests said that his mum used to have this issue where she would accuse him of using again, and he had been, but he was lying. So he would then think in his addict brain, how would sober me respond to my mum, even though I'm not, and it's like, that's so true. Like sometimes I'll come into sometimes I would come out of the bathroom too many times, or if I'm sniffing too much, and I get a real insecurity out of it because I think that, oh my god, they think I'm using. That's me. That's me thinking that, because so many times I would have lied about having a cold, hay fever.
Do you know my one, just on playing a part and just always, I made up for so many years that I was allergic to my family cat. So every time I went back to my mum and dad's, I'd say, see, I told you I'm allergic to the cat.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't just, when the cat died, and still I had red eyes and a streaming nose, I'd sort of run out of excuses, but that's absolutely
You're like,
true.
oh, it's the debris of the hair.
Yeah, completely.
Oh,
Yeah. And it's funny, that playing a part element, because I had a real crisis of confidence just before I went to rehab.
Okay,
Go on.
Sorry. So we've done the business. I'm guessing we're like the business where it's being successful, you're deep in.
I suppose on my way to getting there, if you like. In my 20s, I was clubbing and using.
Yeah.
Few awesome clubbing experiences. One really important one, I think, is this.
Go.
I'm in the bathroom.
Yes.
I've gone to do a line.
Obviously.
I've out my head on pills.
Naturally.
And we're abroad for a friend's stag do. And I lean down to do a line. And then I hear two people whispering about me.
Oh no.
And I hear them saying, Jimmy, which is what close friends refer to me as, Jimmy's all right, isn't it? But he's trying a bit hard. I wish he'd just calm down sometimes.
Oh.
And the other person said, sometimes I don't know whether he knows when to call it a day or not. And anyway, I finished my line. And I actually, genuinely, thought it was the best joke in the world. I thought it was quite funny because I thought they were doing it deliberately.
Oh my God.
So I went out to my friend and I said, that was really funny. And he said, what are you talking about? And he kept a dead straight face. To this day, I do not know, one, whether it happened. It could have been the pills. Two, it did happen, but they didn't want me to hear. Three, it was a genuinely funny joke trying to wind me up in the spirit of, I hate the word, but banter.
Yeah.
But that plays a real part when I was in psychosis in active addiction 10 years later.
Yeah.
Because that was my brain playing tricks on me. One way or another, in
Same.
any one of those three ways.
Yeah, the paranoia.
Yeah. And then the other one was kind of a bit more kind of humour, but this is great actually.
I always thought people were talking about it.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, you know, I'm sure my coke using started because one, if I drank too much, I'd fall asleep.
Yeah.
That was 3 or 4 drinks max.
Yeah.
It's why I'm incredibly lucky. I don't miss alcohol at all.
Neither do I.
It's
So
just,
interesting.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think we've dodged a bullet there. That's
Same.
one thing to be really thankful
But again,
of.
it's where we get into that comparative thing of like,
Completely.
was I that much of a
Yes,
habit?
yeah,
You know?
yeah, really true.
Yeah.
But I used to take up coke because one, I wanted to be the last out, and two, I wanted to remember everything. And
Yeah.
coke was kind of the route to always being the last up and always remembering everything. And that was kind of why I started, just because I couldn't drink. So yeah, that kind of control.
And what was the second story?
Oh, second story is really funny boy logic. I'd been on a date and it'd gone awfully.
Okay. Why?
We hadn't clicked.
Okay, the worst. The
yeah,
worst.
it was just.
If it's the first date, you just know.
Yes.
You know.
And my best friend Fraser, can I say his name? He won't mind. It's a positive
Love you,
story.
Fraser.
Yeah. He'd also been on a date and it hadn't gone very well.
Oh, perfect.
And I rang him And I said, hello, mate, where are you? He said, I'm in Clapham Common. So am I. And we could see each other, completely unplanned. And we went out to celebrate the fact that we were in the same part of London. Yeah. That was it. That's the only reason.
Oh, you didn't need more than that. But you look at that in those situations and you think, this is meant to be.
Yes, completely.
You always do that to yourself.
Completely.
It's like no one can get hold of the dealer for half an hour and then you get the thing.
Yes.
We're meant to carry on.
Exactly. So that was one of the biggest nights ever. And I split up from Fraser and was going around a nightclub looking for our friends who were there. And I kept on hallucinating. And it was an incredibly gay club. It was called Thrust at Fire in Vauxhall.
Yeah.
Should have guessed, right?
Yeah.
Thrust and Fire. It was fine. I mean, I was even fatter than I am now back then. And I was going around the club looking for my friends, hallucinating their faces on people's bodies and literally going up to them, and being really frightened.
Yeah.
And that was really formative in terms of just my head being able to play tricks on me. All right, I'd had pills, so that will help. But it was a real moment of, in retrospect, thinking your brain can be quite deceitful.
It's interesting you say that about the pill thing because lots of people are like, oh, you don't hallucinate on MDMA. I'm like, you absolutely can. I used to have the same because I would take too much when I went through sort of like that raving party drug phase. Yes. And I'd have the same thing at the end of the night, the lights would come up and everyone would have a scaled fish head. And it was the same thing. Now, what that means in terms of my psychology, I don't know.
Wow, that's a moment.
Oh my God.
That's incredible. There you go.
That
is weird.
Is bizarre.
Yes.
Whoa. Well, yeah, I would have these, they would be the fish head and it would really freak me out. And you do that thing where you close your eyes, open them and then everyone's normal again and then.
Yeah.
But yes, the brain playing tricks.
Yes.
You know, I could have been on sessions and I would be convinced that the two people over there would be talking about me. So convinced though. I'd be like, what are you guys talking about? And then I think I could see them looking at each other. Now, I didn't know if that was true or not.
Yeah.
But you trick yourself into being like, but I'm good with people. I know what I'm saying.
Yeah, completely. So I'm using a bit of my 20s to get married at 31. And I've heard you speak on the podcast before about using at weddings and whether a wedding day should be kept special. Mm.
At this point, though, before you've got married,
Go on.
Are there any major consequences to your using? Has anyone said to you, mate, you know?
Yes. Really good question, because yes, and I hadn't thought about this. Somebody really called me out, late 20s, I guess I was 28, and said, you've got a real problem and you need help. And I remember thinking how rude they weren't. They were perfect. They were raising their voice,
right
but
on the nose.
they were right on the nose.
Pardon the pun.
Pardon the pun, yeah. I remember slagging this person off.
Of course, yeah.
I remember saying, "Get back in your box," not directly
or
to
like,
this
have
person's.
a line yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a really good point. I'd forgotten that. It was someone tangential to our core friendship group.
You don't know me.
But God, to use modern vernacular and parlance, I'd so been seen.
Yeah.
I had so been seen.
You didn't like that?
No, I hated it. The other thing, maybe not a consequence, but certainly not a good look, was I had had no respect for airport security. So going...
Literally just did stories on airports.
Really?
On TikTok the other night.
But
yeah, go on.
Going on stag do's, I would be in my underpants, would be... So that is not a good look.
God, that's interesting. See, because that for me, the fear for that, I mean, I would go and pick up big pieces of drugs, you know, with dealers in this country, but the airport thing...
Yeah.
No.
That was special for you. I was going to say...
no, I wouldn't do it because I'd be too scared.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was...
in my head, I will just find them when I get out there.
Yeah. Well, I went on another friend's stag do, and we did some on the plane, which again is just so... there's no point.
No, but when you're now in recovery, right? it's like all these things that you wouldn't dare say. Now you can just be like, yeah, but I'm sober now, so it's fine. And you can talk about them.
There is a release.
You just can.
Yeah. Well, I had got into, in preparation for this stag do,
Oh, the preparation.
I had got into Silk Road. Do you know what that means?
Yes.
Yeah, so the dark internet, which is horrible, because you can order drugs on it.
You can get them
But right next to guns.
Yeah.
I mean, you are so sort of
Yeah.
grade A crime, and you're thinking, what? How am I in this world?
But at the same time, you're going, I'm not on that side of it. I'm
Exactly.
just getting these.
Yeah,
You
completely.
could, again, convincing yourself.
Yeah. So, and we had some sent to the hotel that we
Yeah.
were on this stag do abroad, and we'd run out. And I remember people still now jokingly, and I can take this joke, talk about it as being my finest moment ever. As we're all sat around thinking, we're in a city where it's not easy to get some, and we're all sat around going, oh, how are we going to get
need
some?
more.
And literally, the person from concierge or reception, package from Mr. Erskine.
Did you do it, not say anything, and then it just arrived?
I didn't set it up so that I would be given the package with an adoring crowd, but God, it couldn't have gone better.
Oh, it's
it
one of
filled
the-
my ego,
yeah.
my habit, my...
It's one of the best things to do. I used to get into a bit of it kind of used to be my thing, where I would order an extra bag every time,
Yes.
and I'd keep it and think, and I see because I would only want to give that precious extra bag to the people that could stay up with me, right?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
all you
good
people,
point.
all you people that are going to just do one night,
Kind
fuck
of
off.
VIP.
Yeah. If you're rolling with me into day 3,
Yes.
then I'm going to bring out the special bag.
Yes.
And it would be like this euphoric, I can see how much everyone's struggling. It's 6 a.m. and no one's got any more and you can't get hold of the dealer. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's tragic, really, when I think about it.
Really tragic. You asked consequences. I did lose my job. I conveniently forgot that.
Yeah.
But got another one pretty quickly for a bit more money, so kind of put that down to experience. We did a few, Media Thursdays were our thing. So regularly all Thursday nights straight to our desks on a Friday morning.
Yeah.
We
Drugs at work.
Drugs at work, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. A disabled toilet on a Friday
Oh,
afternoon.
the disabled toilet. We talk about it regularly on here.
Yeah, and it was just leave one in there
In and
if you're
out.
going in, and the kind of the people that knew. The other thing about, and this is quite a sad, shocking indictment, and I don't mean to sound negative of anyone I hung around with, because I'm still very good friends with lots of them, but our Thursday nights used to be in one of the worst pubs in London, and the only reason we met there is it was opposite where my dealer lived at the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We had all of London
All
to
of
play
London.
with, and we went there every Thursday. Now, you could argue, and I do, and I sort of mean it, actually we just wanted to be together. So it didn't matter which room we were in, it didn't matter. But
Yeah.
the fact we chose one right opposite
But
the
you kind of
dealer's
do know
house.
that, that's why.
Yeah, and it was me that said, we're all meeting at this time, and then we did every Thursday for, no exaggeration, 3-4 years, every Thursday. So yeah.
Come downs in these sort of situations then.
Good question.
Because come downs, when you realise it's a problem, that is when those things become a lot worse, I would say. When you are just in that beginning stage of taking drugs and being with your friends, yeah, it's bad, but it's like, I know I'm going to do it again.
I had a job that was negotiating with suppliers. And the old school way of doing that job was shouting. And times were very much moving on from people no longer shouting, but I still did. And sort of was showing off with it. It didn't hurt that my now wife had just started at the agency I was working at, and she was a few desks away, and I was wanting to appear, not that she ever would be drawn to that sort of behaviour,
Yeah.
but at the time I was in my late 20s and thought perhaps she might.
Yeah.
And it was a good way to channel my come down energy.
Okay.
So the anger was there. I did have a short temper. I do have a short temper. It's funny, now I'm completely drug free. I thought my irritable nature might go, but it's still there. In a way, I'm a little bit pleased. I'm pleased it wasn't all chemical.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of temper and the aggression. The feelings of low, the feelings of isolation, the feeling of being on my own really got me.
Yeah.
It's funny, you talk about when you start doing coke on your own as being a real thing.
Yeah.
I didn't for years, but what I did do was manufacture every single situation where I'd never be on my own.
Yeah. Buying drugs for everyone.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, organising, making it as easy for everyone else so that you wouldn't be on your own doing it.
The main purpose of my second flat in London was that it was quite near the office, so everybody could come back from work. It was huge party flat, wasn't particularly good investment,
No.
but it just made sense for after parties.
Yeah.
And that was the reason I bought it. And it was controlling the party, it was controlling the, so yeah, hugely, I mean, it's yeah.
When you weren't partying in those stages and you were alone, you know, did you feel lonely?
I felt like, I mean, I was just getting together with my now wife, and that was so special. Do you know what I did to really, not dodging your question, but maybe I am, so we'll come back to it. But what I did really successfully, in whereas before with all the bitterness, the resentment, the negative energy, it was me against the world. The second I was together with my beautiful wife, it was me and her against the world. And we're going out, sod them, up yours to them, fuck off them. It was a real kind of team moment. And I think that counteracted any being on my own element, and that elements of being lonely. And the other feeling on that is when I was left out, I really felt it. I really felt.
Did you always feel like it was quite premeditated that you'd been left out?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that could be from anything. That could be from a pitch team at work to you know.
Do you want a cup of coffee?
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
They hate me.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're so right.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's the worst.
It's so the worst.
The worst.
You know, a gift of recovery. I'm trying to think how I can say this because I need to anonymise. I've got a dear friend who sadly lost his dad. And that dear friend told me last year, I said, do you want me to come to the funeral? And he said, no, it's very private, small affair, but we're having a memorial ceremony next year. And other friends have been invited to the memorial ceremony, and I haven't yet. And it's taken me all the strength from the world to be, James, it's not about you.
Yeah, I know.
It's not about...
But you want to know why it's not you.
Completely.
I really get that.
And I suppose, bit of therapy speak, you can't be judged on your first thought or first action. You can be judged on your second thought or second action. So at least now, I haven't texted him saying, why am I not invited to your father? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but you want to.
Yes.
Yeah, but not because you want to be invited if you're not wanted there. It's just like why
What
when
have I
you thought
done?
of those people, why do you just naturally think of me because I would?
Yes.
Yeah. It's that control thing.
It is. Control is key.
Because it's an injustice. It's like, well, if I was them and they know that I know them, and therefore why would they just not?
Yeah.
But then you're an hour into thinking about it, and you're like, the guy's dad's just died.
Yes.
You're not there with that.
Exactly.
I need to know, but it's not like I don't know if it's ego. It's insecurity.
Oh, insecurity, definitely.
It's like maybe. Oh, and I will never just take that. Maybe they just forgot because their dad's died and they've probably got like quite a lot going on.
Yes.
I'm more like no. They've actively thought no. I don't want her to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is an exhausting way to live.
Oh, completely.
To overthink all of that all the time.
The exhaustion. I mean, when you think of the pressure, and this is kind of works from a narrative perspective as well in terms of where we are in my life, the pressure to go out all the time, the pressure to construct a reality that wasn't true all the time. You know, I theorise now. I love the theatre. I think I only started going to the theatre so I could show off about going to the theatre.
Yeah,
I
so
do think
interesting,
I
that.
genuinely like it. Football, I was never into football till I was about 16, 17, 18. And then it kind of seemed other people were, so I started watching it. I think I quite enjoy it now, but I think that came from a place of, you know, I don't know what's real and what isn't still.
When you then get to that point of thinking, I'm taking too many drugs and I'm drinking too much and I should probably find something else, but I have no idea who I am because I am just this, I'm the funny, life and soul, drug and party person.
That's it. Yeah, and I'd definitely carved myself that niche. I was starting to fall in love with the theatre a little bit. I was starting to fall in love with decent restaurants, but I think they were almost an extension of this everybody's favourite dinner party guest. They were just stuff to talk about when high. And so, yeah, I was very... It's funny, this was never the plan. I wanted to leave work, my job, and... When I got married, we went on a 9-month round the world honeymoon, and it was brilliant. And a number of things happened. One,
Hang on, your wedding.
oh yes,
I know we have to talk about that.
only I know it's a big thing on this podcast. Having
Yes.
heard you, we did do coke at our wedding.
Okay.
Well, I don't know whether my wife did. That's
But you certainly did.
I certainly did. Yeah, not loads.
No.
Not. Forgive me, we've only just met. Not enough not to
not
perform on the wedding
Okay,
night.
and I'm sure that was in the back of the mind.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And yes, so there was definitely coke
Do you
at
feel
our
bad
wedding.
about that?
It's really tough
Because you had a great time.
because I don't. I really don't.
That's
I
fine.
I really don't feel. I don't. It's easy when you're growing up. I will never do coke at my wedding.
Yeah.
I'll stop doing coke when I'm 30.
Oh, yeah.
I'll stop when the kids come.
Yeah.
I'll stop when I'm 40.
Yeah.
I'll stop when the kids go to school. I'll stop. Well, none of that worked for me. So I do feel an awful lot of shame that I let my addiction get in the way of so much stuff. The kids thing, look, we'll come on to chat.
Yeah.
Crucifies me.
Yeah.
I doubt I'll get through talking about my children as I'm nearly going now without crying,
Understandably.
because I put addiction ahead of them,
Yeah.
and that's awful.
It's interesting though, right, with this dynamic, because going into the rooms, I was like, everyone's older than me. Da, 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 I'm nothing like these people. Whereas now, when the newcomer comes in, I look at them and think, oh my God, this is the start of your life. You know, the
Yes.
older people who look at us when we go in, who don't have children yet or necessarily major responsibilities, you know, they look at that and think, I wish I'd done it when I was their age.
Yeah, well, recovery it's funny, isn't it? Because I can say relapse never played a part in my journey. It's like, well, hang on, mate, you're 46. You should have given up years ago. Then maybe there's time for relapses. So there's kind of that. There's kind of the age I'm at.
But you got married.
Got
you
married.
did coke at the wedding.
Did coke at the wedding. Not an awful lot. Went round the world. Few things happened on our honeymoon. Some that seem trivial, some that are quite important. One, I did coke in secret in Argentina. I was offered some at a party at a youth hostel, and I've only told my wife about that recently, so kept that quiet for 15 years.
And why? Just because she thought that it was a problem and you were worried?
No, just because we were at different parts of the youth hostel. I was talking to two people. They said, "Do you fancy a line?" I was like, "Oh yeah," and because I hadn't had any for months at this stage, I genuinely thought travelling around South America would be a good way to get clean.
I mean,
Riddle me that.
One place.
Exactly. So it just didn't come up in conversation.
Did your wife do drugs?
On occasion, but nothing like me. Nothing like me. And never in secret, and never... I used to have a thing in my 20s where I'd arrive at a nightclub and I would regularly leave with more drugs than I arrived with because I was so paranoid about running out. I would always
Overorder.
I would always do your trick of having another gram back. I would, if I was picking up for everybody, I'd be, 2 grams each. If I was putting stuff out in the middle of a table in a front room, I would always have 2 grams back that were just for me and then go to the toilet
There was always
afterwards.
those people that would be like, we don't need that much. And you're like, come on.
Yes,
Once
completely.
you start, but actually not everyone does drugs like us.
Yes, completely. The other bit, and I'd been quite good on our honeymoon, but when we got to Colombia, we got some, and I still had my London eyes on me and did 2 whacking great lines. And we weren't meant to be doing any till after lunch, like I could wait. And I'm just sat there, unable to speak, face going bright red with London amounts, but it was Colombian cocaine. And that
Hideous.
yeah. So that kind of...
No speech.
Yeah, completely. And the other thing that happened on our honeymoon, and I don't know whether the two happened in tandem, but one, I got quite thin. I was incredibly... you know, it worked, walking every day, doing stuff every day, not sat at my... But the other thing, and I think the two are related, I got a bit of an ego. I became quite self-confident, bordering on arrogant. And whereas before, I'd loved quite a lot of pity, now I really thought I deserved everything that was good. So now the moral injustice really did creep in.
Slide.
Yeah. And so when I got back, and I got different jobs, and I was in my 30s, and children came along not long afterwards. In my head, I was never a bad dad. In my head, I mean, the other thing was, the business I was working for, I'd got another job after I came back from honeymoon. The business I was working for only really had one account and wasn't doing very well. And I sort of was working at it from the ground up. And delivering and changing the offering. So professionally, I was flying.
Yeah.
Personally, I've just come back from a round the world honeymoon with a beautiful wife that loves me and I love her, and we've got a child on the way. It was flying. Social life was good. I was earning decent money for the first time. You know, we just spent all our savings, but we were starting to make, and life felt really, really good. But I was getting the ego to match, I think, was an issue.
But also, everything that society tells you how your life's supposed to go.
Yeah.
Meet someone, marriage,
Yeah.
honeymoon, good job. I'm not an addict.
Yes, very true. And
I'm not an addict.
And it's a really good point, because it was around then, also because I was more senior in this job than I had been in others, which makes sense. But anyway, should look for the whys, just look for the what happened. I was starting using in the daytime.
Do you remember that shift happening?
This is really...
Normalising it.
Well, because this is still a long time ago, and I've not said this outside of a room before, so this is quite tough. But if this doesn't answer normalising it to you, then nothing will. God, this is quite a big one for me to share this.
Don't if you do.
No, it's fine. I will, because I think it's indicative and this will really help. My wife and I are in the labour ward giving birth. She's obviously doing the hard bit to my eldest child. And we are told by the consultant, it's going to be a long labour. You're going to be here for 20 hours. And it's like, from my memory, 10 o'clock at night. And I think there's no way I can stay up that long. Now, most people would have gone for a black coffee at the machine. I rang a dealer. Not a drink near me. What helps me stay up? Cocaine. No thought of it being a crime, no thought of it being wrong, no thought, but it was almost a useful tool. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, but that's insanity.
In a labour ward.
Yeah, I know. The thing is, right, is that you tell another addict these stories. This is the great thing about the rooms, right, is like someone says, that's obviously a very hard thing for you to say because you're ashamed of it. Yeah. But you do start to really, this is the other most ironic thing about sharing with other addicts is that it kind of desensitizes you to it because you
can see the logic.
Because you're like, I'm sorry. I'm like, you're telling the story and I'm going, I know what you're going to say. And I know what you're going to do because I would do exactly the same thing. Yeah. Hopefully not when I'm giving birth.
Yes.
But, you know, yeah. It's kind of like that. Yeah, it takes the power out of it. And I think that's why it's so important to talk to other addicts.
Completely.
But also to make you realise, on the other side, it's like you haven't done the worst thing because there's plenty of times when you're sat in the rooms and you think, fuck me. Yeah. Which is dangerous, right? Because like, you know, but again, it's just that saying it out loud does eradicate some of the shame from it. And it's paradoxical because you don't think it will.
No.
But it does.
Completely. So I've got my darling daughter comes along 2 years later. Work goes.
That is a long labour.
There you go. Yes, nice. So, actually one thing from early childhood. This is a real moment of shame. Actually, this is horrible. And I remember this being really shocking on many levels. This is when I really knew you've got to do something about this. It goes like this. It's a dear friend's birthday party, boiling hot, sunshiny day. And I'm thinking, well, come on, everyone, let's go round to my friend Dan's house. Let's go. And I go round, but my family won't come with me because the party doesn't start till 2. But I'm there at midday.
Obviously.
Hello, friend. Yeah. Happy birthday.
Loud.
Get tucked in straight away because it's a sunny day and we're celebrating.
Always an excuse.
There you go. My wife arrives, I would guess, with the children about 3 hours later. So far, so good. And I've used around my kids before. They're very young. I actually look for quite a lot in the relationship with my children because when I am using, they're the only people that don't know that I'm high. Although, funnily enough, in conversations with my son more recently, he did. But anyway, my wife then has to go to the shop to pick up some more booze, I think. Long way of saying, I'm with a load of drunk people in a back garden, high as a kite, and I'm in charge of my children. And I just remember thinking, I'm not grown up here, and I need to be a grown up because I've got 2 children now. This is not normal. This is not. And that was.
But you do normalise it, that's the thing. And
Completely.
The reason why we do, I know I don't have children, but things like taking drugs to work or turning up places high when you've been on the session the night before, like the reason why it becomes so normal is because you get away with it.
Yeah.
And the resilience of yourself is to just... And when other people don't notice the difference between you either being pissed or high or not, or none of them, it's like...
Well, that's a really interesting point about people not noticing. I still don't know who knows what, when, and do you know what I mean? Am I always
saying that
sweating?
Well, yeah.
Am I always loud?
Yeah, saying that though, when you have never experienced drugs, you do not know when it's going on around you, if it's being done in secret. Obviously, it's right in front of you. Now, even now, if I'm out and about, anything, it's like someone goes to the toilet, I see them go 4 times, I'm like, they're doing drugs.
Yeah.
You're so hyper aware of it. So I don't know, but I think there probably have been a lot of times where we think we've been very clever and secretive, and
I used to say this, I think if you were to ask my friends that spent any length of time around me during that era, if you were to give them 5 words to associate with me, they would have all put cocaine in the top 2.
Yeah, same.
It was just presumed, and presumed I'd have it, presumed I'd be on it. And the other thing that was getting bad around this time was I was starting to lie. I was starting to lie about the amounts I had on me, the amounts I'd done during the week, the amounts that I was willing to give to other people. Do you know what I mean? It just started to fudge numbers. Really good point on money. I've never been good with money.
Me either.
It's funny, before I went to rehab, so fast forwarding a few years, I was paranoid that people were going to look at my bank accounts. And so I started putting all my drug deals through my business. I set up 2 freelancers and paid them. And 1, that's a silly idea because you pay tax.
Yeah.
2, it's a silly idea because in my business records, luckily it's long enough ago now that they don't show up.
Yeah.
But I could tell you not only exactly how much I'd spent with 2 dealers, but also why they were the 3rd and 4th most best paid people in the business. You know what I mean? So,
you think you're being clever.
So clever.
You're like
clever. The fact that I was cashless by the end, because I had relationships with 3 or 4 dealers that I could just say, I'll wire you the money. I mean, it just took all the pain out of it.
And you, the kind of the exercise of picking up. I mean, you just eradicate one big annoying part of cash.
Yes,
you know?
completely.
As soon as you can get a drug dealer that's going to take a transfer, that's a dangerous time to get to.
Yes. And so it's getting.
So it's getting to that point now where you're lying. And what is it then? The relation. You've got 2 children now. Situations like that are happening where you're at a party and that. And what's your relationship with your wife like in terms of the drug? Like, does she know? Is it an ongoing discussion?
She has. It's kind of in secret now, in that if I'd be out on a media lunch on a Thursday afternoon and not go back to the office, I wouldn't mention it to her. I'd just come home and not eat tea. It's not massively discussed. There are a few times when I go out with other people that it does happen. But interestingly, and this was a big moment, and this is before there were 3 things that happened that really shook my soul.
Okay.
This was before then, I think. I was at work. I did a line before I walked home, and I came home and I said to my wife, I'm in the midst of cocaine addiction and I've no way to stop it. And it was huge. I didn't really plan on it. I just thought, comparatively, compared to 5 years later, I guess, this was nothing.
Interesting, yeah.
But it was big enough for me to say, I need help and I want to get out of it.
Interesting how you had to do it came after doing the line.
Yes, completely.
Yeah.
Oh, all the best chats are then, aren't they? Then I can be really emotional.
Yeah.
Then I can get in touch with my emotions.
Yeah.
Really good point. I am being sarcastic for the benefit.
I know.
So, but
and what was that reaction?
to be fair, it was amazing. I didn't feel judged. It's making me well up.
This is it, you get all the emotions back.
Well, you do get the emotions back, but also I hadn't even really remembered this part of my story.
I think that's why it's so special, this podcast.
Oh, completely.
And I've had people go and listen back to their own episodes because it gives them the timeline.
Yes. Well, this was so special. We went to see a therapist, Imogen and I, together. I stopped using for 9 months, maybe 10 months.
Just with therapy?
Just with therapy. Some of his techniques were write yourself a letter of mourning for the hole that cocaine will leave in you. Imogen and I came up with a silly slogan, we're going to do kebabs, not curry, which was kind of, sorry, kebabs, not cocaine.
Cocaine, yeah. I was going to...
Sorry, kebabs, not cocaine, which was a big thing of our, how we were going to get better. And we were amazing. And it was really good. And then I'm trying to think how the worst thing about that was that from then on, I'd given up.
Yeah.
So from then on, everything was in secret because I'd given up. I wasn't using again.
So you managed to do 9 months.
Yes.
What was the...
It goes... The times were a bit off. I think there were a couple of nights where I dabbled, but weirdly, just dabbled.
That is weird, isn't it?
It's so strange. It makes no sense in terms of if there were a trajectory.
Yeah, usually you'd start and you can't stop.
Yes, and then I had a triple whammy.
Okay.
Triple whammy goes, my dear old mum gets a brain tumour, and I would love to say I was courageous, but I was, in the literal meaning of the word, pathetic. I went to pieces.
I would be the same.
And my siblings lived abroad in various places. So I was kind of doing the job of 4 siblings. To be fair, I didn't do an amazing job. I didn't probably see her enough. But anyway, between home and hospital, I couldn't be brave. I could not see her, Hannah. It's an awful thing to say, but I've said this before, so I don't think I'll cry when I say this. I hated seeing my mum when she was dying.
Right, that's pretty understandable. Yeah, that's so understandable. It must be awful.
You know, I had a chat with my mum.
And you have the responsibility because your cousins that's quite a lot.
Yeah.
Not cousins, sorry, siblings.
Siblings, yeah. The only chat I really had with my mum about it, I think it was engineered by my wife and my dad. They went out somewhere, and it was just me and my mum on my sofa in my house. And my mum just looked at me. I said before, we're more likely to say fuck off than I love you. We're more likely, there's never been and my mum just turned to me, and we both had tears in our eyes, and she just went, it's shit, isn't it? And I went, I love you, mum. I mean, that was all we said about the illness. Everything else was, what meals have you had today? So
it's quite brushing under the carpet.
Oh, it was huge.
But neither of you really want to. It's that way of. It's a coping way to do it.
Completely.
It is.
So in the illness, what happened was every time I went to the John Radcliffe, every time I went home, I would never drive because I was anxious I was going to use, and I would use. Cocaine became my way of seeing my mother. Some incredible. I mean, once I was in the lift in the hospital, and I never normally got nosebleeds. I had the biggest nosebleed, and thank goodness it was a hospital, so nobody really nobody. Everyone just thought, oh, he'll be on his way to the nose section or whatever.
Can I just ask? Because I get lots of people who ask me about dry sniffing. So no alcohol needed to start.
Yeah.
Are we at that stage now?
Oh, hugely.
Sorry. So
no, you're fine to ask.
Because I find that quite fascinating. Because the 2 times I tried to do that made me very anxious, and then I would just follow it up with booze. You eventually got to a point where you didn't need to have a drink. It wasn't the thing that. No.
Never. Really. I mean, daytime. I'm trying to think because you're right. I mean, look, at this stage, no alcohol required at all. Not in the evening, not later, not to take the edge off.
Do you notice a difference in taking it from when you've had a drink? Is it more?
Oh, it's alarming, and you get very edgy during the first 3 lines.
Yes.
You get very.
Yeah.
But then.
You ease into it.
Yeah, and again, this sounds silly, but my dad would be at hospital sometimes. But he wouldn't notice, quite rightly.
Yeah.
His wife's dying, and he's focused on that. And I'm kind of there to be the class clown. So it's such artifice. It goes back to everything that's toxic about what we've been saying about pretending, about the creating a... But literally, I remember going up in the lift, feeling so drained, so exhausted, so upset, and then walking through and going to the bathroom. Hi Mum, how you doing? Lovely to see you. Well, guess what? I'm at work today. And I'd be like a big breakfast presenter, feeling so low. So, look, I need to be really careful of blame here because my cocaine habit did not start because I lost my mum. I didn't even start doing it in the daytime because my mum, but that meant coke creeped into the daytime.
Yes.
Then the business went bust,
Yeah.
which was kind of around the same time, which I've already told you about. And then the other thing that happened was at the start of COVID, probably about a year later. So I'm dabbling, but not all over the place. And then in COVID, something weird happened with me and my wife. And I've always been so proud of my marriage. Everybody says they're most proud of their children, and I'm incredibly proud of my children, but I'm almost more proud of my marriage because we are so us against the world. But when I spent my entire life looking for proof that the world was against me, I saw the tiniest chink in the armour of the person that I love the most and loved me the most, and sort of saw it go, oh, hang on. And that, for me, was proof that it was unfair, it was unjust, it was every toxic turn of phrase. And the trouble was, I over-focused on it. And I remember...
Obsessed.
Oh, Hannah, obsession is... Here's where this led to now.
Yeah.
Now we're in...
Because that happens.
This is what I call my super using period. Again, I need to be careful. What happened with my wife did not cause my addiction. But honestly, by the end of the 2 years, I had no relationship with reality. I went so silly trite word, nuts. I was,
Psychosis.
I was in psychosis for 2 years.
Yeah.
I was using, and I hate talking amounts, but I think this is almost where...
I think it's important towards the end, actually.
So 5 grams a day,
Yeah.
3 to 5 grams a day, something like that. And I would
Sleep deprived.
Hugely sleep deprived. Oh, check this out for this time.
Yeah.
I went to see a psychiatrist because I wasn't sleeping very well. It's amazing how
it's
3
incredible.
to 5 grams of coke will,
Yeah.
you know, will do
You
that
won't tell
to
them
them.
that, though.
And they put me on incredibly strong sleeping pills.
Benzos.
I don't know what they were called. I think they must have been. But
Diazepam.
yes, I think it was.
Know them well.
Yes, there you go.
Because when I met those, I was like, great.
Really?
I can do as much cocaine as I like and I can sleep. And that's
Yes.
the one thing that bothers me about my cocaine addiction is the sleep thing. That's the only thing.
Yes.
And then I found those. That was just another addiction.
And then I think I was doing Xanax off the street as well
Yeah.
sometimes.
And then you get used to them like anything. You get tolerance.
Well, this was, I'd done, during these 2 years, I was in a hospital for a week trying to dry out. I was having, by the end, urine tests every 2 weeks that I learnt to fake. I would go to the Sainsbury's, buy a kind of a peach drink, get it topped up with boiling water at Costa and then smuggle that in for the urine test.
Wow.
So the cycle was just incredible. And the madness came out like this. I would record my wife having conversations with another man. I would then take those recordings and play them to friends to say, can you hear what my wife is saying to this man? And would know what I heard it say. And they would say no. And the reason they would say no is because there was nothing there.
Not even a voice.
Not a voice. And my life became every night record, every day the next day listen, send out at about lunchtime, no response. And you talk about getting connection, you talk about not being heard. I was literally not heard by anyone. That's because there was nothing to hear. I was in psychosis.
So when they were saying to you, there's nothing there, James.
I thought they were in on the conspiracy, Hannah.
Wow.
I thought,
Everyone's against you.
I've never said this. This is really tough. The madness I got to was that the audio that I recorded on my devices was being altered by the person she was having the conversation with.
I just can imagine that. I can imagine.
Can you?
Yeah.
That makes me so pleased you can.
No,
I mean, because I always think this
paranoia is just so unbelievable. It's like, it's so convincing. And what's so mad about it is that you shouldn't believe yourself because you are insane, but you don't believe anyone else.
Well, this was it. And going to see psychiatrists, therapists,
You think that they...
I'd just pull it back from the brink because I'd know I was mad. I know there is no way someone can be controlling the audio. I know there was no way someone was in our house. I thought this other person was in the house sometimes. And I was just driven to... And every time I doubted myself, actually 2 things on this. One, once I gave up during this 2 years of super using for about 35, 36 days. And I listened to some audio that I previously heard, conversations. And I couldn't hear anything. And do you know what I did? I thought, well, I know how to hear those, and started taking drugs again. It's been described to me like a comfort blanket of razor blades. If I couldn't get what I wanted from this situation, then I had to...
But also it means that you have to accept that you were wrong.
Yeah. Oh, you're so right.
And that
You are so
is
right.
just hideous.
You're
because
there.
you've gone so far down the line with it.
Oh, yeah?
You can't give it up.
Yeah.
You can't be wrong.
No, and the ego was there, and I didn't like being ill, and I didn't like being an addict, and I didn't like, and I was alienating people because people were, by this stage, people were getting worried, and people were starting to say, I don't get how he's faking a urine test every 2 weeks. People were starting to really get on top of me, and some people were calling me out, and it was getting scary and worrying. I did a good enough job in every meeting with the therapist of just about saying, oh no, I don't really think there are voices. And then being convinced there were voices.
Yeah.
I was, I mean, in such an incredible state.
And how's she dealing with that?
I mean, look, one amazingly, compared to her, I accused her of having an affair every day for 2 years. That puts an incredible strain on your marriage. There was an awful moment where this bloke I thought she was talking to he sent me conversations that he was having with my wife's sister. And those conversations, I know, incredibly incestuous, said, oh, she's leaving him. She's definitely leaving with him. He's fucked her life. She's definitely leaving. So then I had more proof.
Yeah.
And then
So
I'd
you're
go
like,
back,
well, you do talk then?
yeah.
You do talk.
And then I'd go back to the original proof. It was just such a... I didn't know what was real. I didn't know what wasn't real. I didn't... it was so... So you asked me how she's dealing with it. She's incredible. It makes me love her all the more. It's incredible she didn't leave. It's incredible she didn't kick me out earlier. She didn't kick me out at all. It's funny. I mean, we don't talk about it that much because it was such a strain. I was so unwell. In my recovery, and we'll talk rehab in a second because that's where I went to. In my recovery, last August, I was really focusing on everything that did happen. All how I was unfairly treated, all how there was kind of horrible conversations that were had that excluded me, actions that were had that excluded me. And I was in a really bad place. I nearly, if I was ever going to relapse, it would have been last August. But then in September, October, I was focusing on all the stuff that didn't happen. My psychosis, my mania, my accusations, and it's a lot healthier perspective.
Then you see you're better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A, you see the distance between how ill I was. B, going back, my wife is incredible. She's so incredible. I mean, we were such a great partnership. We are such a great partnership. Life's changed from when we were in our 20s. Obviously, we get older, we've got 2 little people to support. And she had some therapy just as I was about to go to rehab. She had we did a bit of couples therapy that I insisted on that neither of us were ready for.
Yeah.
I was expecting some kind of line of duty accusatory scene where I could say this did happen at this moment and therefore...
But really, nothing was going to get better until you...
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
You weren't going to buy into any of it.
No. And then...
So what was the sort of catalyst then for
Well, there was one that was... I think I told her I relapsed.
Yeah, because this is all in secret. Well, she must.
Everything's in secret. I mean, we invented during COVID Tipsy Tuesdays.
Well, every day, you know.
I mean, Tuesday, just another day for her to drink and me to use in secret. I think it was fairly obvious. Sometimes I was using. By the end, I mean, this is an awful chat, but Imogen said, why is there white powder by the sink in your bathroom? And I said,
your daughter.
Yeah,
that's your wife.
that's my wife. And she said, why is there white powder by the sink? And I said, well, I'm not telling you the truth until you tell me the truth.
Right.
So we were there.
Yeah.
We were
Okay.
barriers. We were psychosis. We were... So, and I think we'd agreed with my therapist, because I went to see a therapist when I thought Imogen was cheating, and she wasn't. I went to see a therapist because I was having a really tough time, basically, even saying and hearing the words, I love you. I was just thinking everything is against me. And we basically said to my therapist, if I relapse again, I'm going to rehab.
But you obviously are in a relapse, but they don't know that.
Exactly.
Okay, with you. I love that you're going to therapy for all these things, but not about the fact that you're taking drugs again.
Yeah, completely. Because I am using.
But also the exhaustion, right? You're living in your own fucking hell at this
Hannah,
point.
by the end,
It's so tiring.
The one thing that I talk about in recovery is being freed by the honesty. By the end, I had so many different clean times. My therapist thought December, a friend thought last November, a friend thought 4 weeks.
Isn't that interesting? Because that's the same as when we started the conversation of when I'm with that group of friends, I don't know if I've told that level of the story or that level of the story.
Yes, you're so right to draw those parallels. Yes. So I'm at a family occasion, and the worst thing was, because I was on sleeping pills, whenever I stopped using coke, I would fall asleep for 3 days at a time. Yeah. No exaggeration. Yeah, yeah. I would be gone.
Yeah, there's a family's like that.
It was so tough. And I'm at a family function, and for once, I'm trying to be good. And I'm deciding I can't use at a family function. And I fall asleep at the table, literally. And my dad takes the mickey out of me. He starts snoring.
Do they know that you're having all these?
They know I'm going through something.
Okay.
They know that I think Imogen is doing something behind my back. They know that things aren't good. They suspect I might be using. I mean, lots of people think I'm using, but they don't. And I'm feeling really kind of alone because nobody's saying what's going on in your marriage.
Did you ever wish for people to ask you, sometimes weirdly?
Well, it's funny.
I used to expect that it would just be, I used to want it to happen, but not. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I used to want to get caught.
Yes.
I used to want to get found out.
By the end.
Because then I don't have to do the self-admission.
Yes. Do you know, you remember I said I'd put all my deals through the business? I switched to doing it through my own bank account about a month before I went to rehab. And I swear that was because I wanted someone to check my bank account.
Yeah.
So it's weird that.
Yeah.
So I'm at this family do, and
Falling
because
asleep.
I'm all the way in the countryside, I have to pay someone a fortune to deliver gear.
Oh, so you've fallen asleep at the table and now you're going to go...
Now I'm paranoid that
okay, so
I can't be falling asleep at a family do.
Yeah.
I'll get a load of gear in. I get a load of gear in. My sister called me out in the end. She said the next morning, it was quite remarkable how 1 minute you were falling asleep at the table, the next minute you were everyone's favourite dinner party guest. So I coasted the night. I'm sure everyone was talking that night. And the next morning my sister said, why are there X number of grams in your bag upstairs? She'd done the whole get you to the point.
Yeah.
And she said, do you want to give up? It was very emotional. And I said, yeah, I'd love to, but I can't. Because right now, I'm feeling under attack. I'm feeling like nobody's asking the questions about what's going on in my marriage. And some of it, psychosis, some of it, anyway, it was a mess. The good thing was, I think there was a marker in the sand then, because I was going to rehab. If you'd have asked me what rehab was at that stage, I think I probably would have conjured an image of non-alcoholic cocktails by a swimming pool.
And a little break.
And a break.
A good little break. Get myself back sorted.
Exactly.
Never thinking of forever.
Yes.
Or like actually stopping. Yeah.
I think, yeah, I knew it needed a circuit breaker. It's funny, my best friend was filled with, you need to get away from it. I had very good friends around me saying, you've got to stop this. You're going mad. We can't hear this stuff in the audio you're sending us. We can't hear. So everybody was, all roads led. What was funny is when I was going to rehab, kind of then all bets were off. I kind of thought, well, I'm going in a month.
I'm going to really see it
see
it through. Yeah.
I really did.
I think that's a very normal.
And the other thing, and I joke about this, and I shouldn't, but I did coke on the plane to South Africa where my rehab was. And I joke, at least now I know I've got a definite clean date I can tell everybody, because that was the last time I used. And I can tell everyone that because it's the hours before I checked in. So I went to rehab in South Africa. Sounds very glamorous.
I hear great things about South Africa. My parents looked at South Africa for me.
Where did you go?
I didn't go. I went straight to the rooms. I was so couldn't deal with the thought of taking money off them in that
Bless
particular
you.
time in my life.
Yeah.
So I said we had agreed that if the rooms wouldn't work,
Okay.
we'd look at rehab.
Well done. That's amazing.
Now they happen to work, but yeah, I mean, UK stuff is, I've just heard, not the best things, if I'm honest.
Well, the other thing is South Africa, including the flights, was cheaper than
the other thing is
equivalent
that I
in the
looked
UK.
at that and thought that will be a holiday. That will be that I know myself. I knew just me in that time of my life. Now, if I was to relapse now, I think I would definitely go to rehab.
Yeah.
But in that specific time, I needed it to be, for me, the worst. I needed to punish myself, and I didn't feel like going to South Africa was a punishment enough.
See, any time away from the kids was going to...
Yes, it's different
rip it.
circumstances.
I mean,
yeah.
any time... I was convinced this other bloke was moving in with my wife. That was the reason they wanted me to go to rehab.
God, yeah.
I was in such... And I know there is no truth in that. I was just, batshit crazy. I was all over the place. So I went. I did coke on the plane. Stupid, but I did. I got there. I was incredibly resentful, incredibly tired, because it's the first time I wasn't using coke and therefore just slept for like 4 days when I got there. Hated the first 3 weeks there, because no phone, you're in, up at 6 in the morning, very regimented. And then when I got to big school, after the second 3 weeks, their secondary treatment, I actually started to quite like it. I was allowed my phone for 25 minutes a day, not 15. So that felt okay. I got my iPad back to read newspapers and sort of acclimatise. I was something of a grade A student. I took the assignments very seriously. I did some work on my inner self. I was actually getting to grips with reality. The thing that was rubbish about rehab, for me, is I had 2 stages of denial. Because at the end of rehab, I was still saying, my habit, there's a Freudian slip, addiction, I was still calling it a habit. I said my addiction started when stuff went wrong in my marriage.
Yeah.
I wasn't yet able to
you're not at that,
surrender to say it predated by that by some 20 years.
Yeah.
So then I got back from rehab.
But that takes time.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes. And then I went to a thing that more or less saved my life called Start to Stop, that I would strongly recommend.
Okay.
In Kensington. They have a daytime programme. I went to that for 4 weeks. I then went to an evening programme for 14 weeks. So it readjusts you back into the real world.
Yes, because that's where some people get it wrong.
Completely. I would have relapsed.
Rehab and go, I've completed addiction.
Hugely. And I would have relapsed in a heartbeat. I remember standing on my doorstep where I used to smoke and wait for dealers, thinking, I'm just going to call someone after I got back from rehab. And it was this ongoing, less bumpy landing that made it just about okay.
Bearable.
The other thing about South African rehab, kind of on my learnings high horse now, is you don't get a community because everyone's in South Africa if you're a Brit. Whereas Start to Stop in London or any London equivalent, you get a London community. So it's people you can see, and that's so important.
Yeah. Connection with other addicts is huge, I think.
Definitely.
So does that cost money, that Stop to Start thing?
Start to Stop. It does. And it's pretty chunky. You can either stay or you can just do the outpatient thing in the evening.
But you'd recommend that?
Hugely.
Okay.
Honestly.
Can you do that if you've not done rehab before? It's like
they will obviously have brand speak. They say they are for people that have been to rehab, but a couple of people that I did the evening programme with hadn't been to rehab. So they talk about it being for that, you just have to have surrendered, basically. And it's...
So by the time you got back from South Africa and done Stop to Start, how do you surrendered?
Yes, Start to Stop.
Start to Stop, sorry.
You're fine, don't worry. You don't work there.
No.
You've not been.
No.
They did a series of sessions about damages. And you start in those, in week 1, it's easy, because you tell your most shocking story where you've damaged stuff as a result of your addiction. They make you do that for about 8 weeks, for 2 hours each week.
Break down the ego.
Yes, and it's damages. And I definitely left there thinking, look, whatever has happened in my marriage, I have had a 25-year affair with cocaine.
Yeah.
I'm lucky, Hannah. I've never been unfaithful. I've never been strip clubby, sleazy kind of bloke. And I also can say with my hand on my heart, I've only ever lied about cocaine. But that's bollocks. Because that's everything. I'm just going to go and buy a vape from the petrol station to meet a dealer. I'm just going to transfer some money to that account to pay a dealer. I'm just going to... But during the 2 years of madness, Hannah, and I'm really not proud of myself for this, I would take coke abroad on family holidays. Now, I've already said I had no respect for airports. On a stag do, someone being not let on the flight is... I mean, it's not funny, but it's not the worst thing in the world.
No.
Imagine my kids.
Yeah.
Daddy couldn't come on holiday to Greece because he got stopped at the airport by a police officer. Oh.
But because you've gotten away with that so many times,
Yeah.
now when it gets to the point of family holidays, it's a breeze to you.
Yes.
You're not even second guessing it.
No.
Because you know you can get away with it.
Yeah. So
that's-
laissez-faire, to use that. So...
I know, but it is. It becomes our whole reality.
Yes.
And nothing can really get in the way of it.
It's funny, just bringing up my kids.
Now would be the time.
They were... It's so tough because addicts have addict children. That's a stat.
Yeah.
So your role is to be that intervention bit.
You say that, but my mum said it was the most painful thing of her life to watch me. She knew I had to get to it on my own,
Yeah.
which meant she didn't intervene. And some people may disagree with that. But she did not know the absolute depths of it, no. But she certainly knew that
Yes.
I was a very, very unhappy person, and that was probably a significant factor.
Yes.
And didn't really... It was always there for me, you know what I mean? But was never forcing me to go, never suggested, maybe once mentioned AA,
Yeah.
probably in a panic stage,
Yeah.
but really knew that she had to watch me crumble.
Yes.
And you don't know that, as I didn't know that she was doing that, obviously, at the time.
Yeah, it's
And
funny.
then it's part of me that's like, well, why didn't you step it? You know, I think if as a parent, you have an upper hand if you are dealing with a child in addiction and you've struggled yourself. You do. But then also you kind of think, well, I fucking gave it to you, so sorry about that. You know, there's that guilt of,
Yeah.
fuck.
Well, my boy is 12, he'll be 13 soon. And every single action that is off kilter, that isn't grade A student, I look at through three lenses. Lens 1, he's a teenage boy. Lens 2, he's the son of an addict. Lens 3, he's my son. And it's probably a combination of all of those things, right? But it makes me really scared. Just him, I was talking about being deluded or exaggerating. When he did that as a kid, I remember crying because I remember thinking when I did it, it was to be more interesting.
Yeah.
And I came down really hard on him. I had to say, you do not need to be more interesting. You are enough. Instilling in my children that they're enough. But they both have addict tendencies. My little boy will be dishonest. He is, look, some of it is screen time with a teenager. Everyone's going through that. My daughter is she wants everything to be perfect. She still puts her mum to bed.
Funny how it manifests in different
Completely.
ways, this obsessive behaviour. You know, like some people have OCD, but because it's not drinking drugs and illegal, you kind of think, but it's obsessive, addictive behaviours.
Yes.
But I guess as the parent, you have to just, I mean, I can't advise on that because I'm
No.
not one, but you kind of know what you have to do, but it's just fucking hard.
Really hard.
Yeah.
And the other thing is you are with the perpetual thought that at one stage, these two people they should be the most important things in your world. And there is no debate that I put addiction ahead of them. And that shows me, one, kids are a cheat code to recovery for a number of reasons. One, they prove you're an addict.
Yeah.
Because if you're any sort of a parent, they should be number one. And if you're an addict, they're not. So it's like, oh yeah, I was. They're a cheat code because gratitude list, easy. Thing 1, something the boy did. Thing 2, something the girl did. You're already 2 in, so it's going great.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think a key thing in recovery is looking for a purpose of something.
Absolutely.
And almost a halfway house for that. And I have discovered it is not enough, by the way, just to live for the very being of other people. But for a while, being a better parent is really, really good because it does give you some purpose.
Yeah.
And just little things like, whereas before...
That's so true. For a period of time, it's that thinking of, I'm not taking drugs and drinking. But I'm just not doing that. I'm just not doing that.
Yeah.
And that is the pink cloud.
Yes.
You know, you have that. I have that at the moment.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
There's dips. But yeah, it's true because that's the worst thing.
Yeah.
But then you...
Yeah. I mean, I'm just... When I'm talking to them, I don't constantly try to make them laugh anymore. Yeah. And it's a subtle distinction.
No, that's
but
massive
you
for you,
realise
though.
hugely.
Again,
my job is to develop you, not just to have a laugh with you.
And you're telling your son you are enough.
Yes.
But then you're trying to...
Yes.
You know?
Completely.
And you're enough to them because you're their dad. You're their dad.
Yes. And I think throughout it all, look, there's kind of a comedy story in this. We were very open with both of them. And Frankie goes back to school after I'd been at rehab, asked, how was your summer? The first thing she said, well, Daddy went away to rehab for cocaine addiction. And we got a call at home. Hello, we understand Frankie's father's been away over the summer. And it's like, yes, that's right. So,
that's brilliant.
Yeah, it is good.
I love that, though.
Yeah, we've been very, they both know the words cocaine. They know about the rooms. They know about the 12 steps. They know. So I've kind of taken them on the journey with me. That I don't want them to know the details. I don't want them to know the depths. I don't want them to know, the darkness, if you like. But yeah, I think
if a day comes and that's it's appropriate to do that, maybe they are. You know,
hugely.
I think you're in the best position.
The worst thing I think
But then also,
everyone's unique. Everyone's on that. I was going to say something a bit disparaging of other people then, so I need to be careful. But how to phrase it? Well, I was just going to say, I think the worst possible thing we could have done is said, Daddy's gone away for mental health reasons.
Yeah.
Because it's...
But also, right, you know, at the start of this conversation, you're saying everything was very... it's not that great. Okay, well, anyway, moving on, you know?
Yeah, very true.
You would have been doing the same thing, repeating the same thing of saying...
Yes.
You know, sort of surface leveling it instead of just saying, it is what it is.
Yeah,
you know?
surface leveling.
The one thing you learn, like, when you're a kid and then you become an adult is, fuck me, adults lie all the time about the most weird things.
Yes. Yeah, very true. So it's a complicated one, recovery and addiction, being a parent, because it puts it through different prisons and there's different levels of responsibility. And the other thing in recovery that's I really need to watch, and I've kind of mentioned it before, is around resentment and bitterness. Because I can still be so resentful and so bitter of other people.
Are you forgiving of yourself, though, that you are also a human being? The thing is that is a massive addict character trait. So you associate it with the addiction, but also...
It's a good point.
Who knows? If you hadn't been an addict, would you still have it? But you're aware of it, you know? Like, I can't even take a fucking Sainsbury's bag for free, just sneakily, without feeling like... Yeah, you think about what you did in the past.
Mine's a work in progress about giving myself a break for being a human being.
But we are.
Yes.
We're never getting... Lots of people think that there's this end goal. There isn't.
It's a really good point.
Do better than yesterday.
It's a really good point.
Even if you do the same as yesterday, you're not drinking and taking drugs.
Yes, very true.
But don't be an angry drunk. Don't be a dry drunk.
No,
That's
definitely.
the worst.
That is the worst.
Emotional sobriety and sobriety.
Do you know what else I should say is about recovery, and it's to that point, is when I was going to the start-stop thing, they said, you got to go to 2 meetings a week. And I didn't. I lied. I went to 1.
Yeah.
And
that's the worst thing to tell an addict what to do, though. Just advise. So here are the options. It's like...
Yes. And I only went to 1 meeting, and it was a men's meeting on a Sunday night, and I loved it, and I'm now secretary at that meeting. It was really good. But one of the things that I thought would happen is I wouldn't bother with the rooms. I wouldn't bother with Narcotics Anonymous. I honestly thought in my head I was going to compartmentalise recovery, do a bit of recovery on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, work quite hard the rest, then weekend for my... It doesn't work like that.
No.
It has to be an everyday thing,
Yeah.
even if that... And now I'm borderline puritanical. I had my first conversation about being a recovery bore quite recently. I go to 3 or 4 meetings a week.
I think if you stop like making them separate to your life,
Yes.
you intertwine it. Like
Yes.
it is you.
Yes.
It is your life.
Very true.
And that's what the issue I do have with fellowship is the secret. I completely respect other people's anonymity and that they want to be anonymous, but that's not my story, and I don't think it's right to not. I think it makes it secretive. It makes it shameful, and
it's funny, I think your relationship with the with the 12-step program is a really healthy one. Because if you look at the way people interpret religion, and I'm not holding up religion as being, but there are definite parallels, right?
100%.
People tell me the 12 steps are in the book of James, or anyway.
I couldn't tell you.
Anyway, me either, really. But religion is picked apart and taken to make different points by different people. Well, that's what a 12-step program should be like. And there shouldn't be a
100%.
doctrine. There should be Hannah loves that bit. Take that bit and just
obviously
use
you can't just do what, like, you know, for example, like I do gratitude every night, but I do spoken word. I do not write down
Yes.
everything because I don't do that. But I don't give myself a hard time about it, and I also don't talk to anyone else about it because I don't need anyone else's opinion on that.
Yes.
I have used the steps are invaluable. They're the best part because they help you with your emotional sobriety. They make you figure out who you are, why you got to where you got to. Amazing, you know. But
yes. Shall I tell you one other thing on recovery, which I really believe in and am passionate about? And it uses quite a comical corporate term, a business term, of stakeholder engagement. Have you heard stakeholder engagement? So what it means in a business capacity is take along everybody that's invested in the project. So your suppliers, your customers, everybody, that's stakeholder engagement. In recovery, what I've taken that to mean is there are lots of people that are invested in your progress. Your recovery is your recovery, but you couldn't have got there on your own. So take people on a journey with you. So I still now 2 of my siblings live in Australia, but I have a quarterly call with my dad, my brother and sister, my 2 brothers and my sister, my beautiful wife, and we sit round and we discuss my addiction. And I hated the idea.
I was going to say.
I hated the idea at first. Now I love it because it's really complimentary.
Yeah.
And it helps that I'm not relapsing. It helps that I'm not an arsehole to be around. But it's taking them on the journey, and it's part of making amends, right? And one of the things where I've been rubbish at is thanking my amazing wife. I've not done enough of that. It's a real black mark.
I think it's really hard when you're doing a sober living amends with the people who you're around every day.
Yes.
So you're kind of just like, and they're seeing the progress and they're watching you and you're doing that, and you're not taking drugs and you're not drinking and you're being amazing. And so it's like, you also just need to remember, like, you know.
Yes.
Gratitude, it's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, and yeah.
But also sometimes, I don't know, that living amends is so vital, but at the same time, not forgetting. My
sponsor is amazing, but he's about, I guess, 10 years younger than me, so he's nowhere near children. And he said to me about making amends, I said, I need to make amends to my kids. And he said, oh, that's living amends.
Yeah.
And I said, quite the opposite. And I was quite forthright. I said, I want to take my children out for a cup of coffee and just say, I did not do what I should have done, and I will do better.
Do you think that you should wait till they're older to do that?
I've actually done it.
Okay.
And
I'm just thinking.
And I didn't go into details.
No.
I didn't go into.
But actually, they'll remember that. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But
I just think it also makes you accountable, and I'm quite big on accountability. I think can be used to mean a lot of things by a lot of people, sometimes in a bit of a toxic way. But if it keeps me accountable to that process and to that, then I think it's
and like you don't want to have that conversation again. So it's like, you know,
well, there is that.
It's like that sometimes.
Definitely. Have you had any really hard amends?
Not yet. I haven't done them yet.
Oh, fine.
Because in my understanding of what step 9 was, it was that I didn't have the right understanding of it.
Right.
And what I've had to realise is that it's not about me. Step 9 is not about me.
No, very true.
It's about the people.
Completely.
And if those people right now are going through stuff in their life, I don't need to come in. And that's not me not wanting to do it. It's
completely.
me being appreciative of the fact that they are not, one of them's poorly, the other one's got business work, there's lots going on.
Yeah.
And actually, right now, I am doing everything I need to be doing for them right now.
Yes.
And one of them may not like me one of them I may have never had an emotional conversation with like that. So that would be very uncomfortable for them.
Yes.
So then I look at writing a letter,
Yes.
and I didn't know that you could do that. You don't just sort of sit down and go, hi, I'm ready to do my step 9 now.
No, completely.
And I got that, I didn't know that, but I have done some step 9s.
Yeah.
And they've gone well.
Good.
And I don't, I think people worry about it, but the majority of good, decent people, if someone says sorry to them and means it, will be accepting of it.
If they see you, it's probably going to go all right.
Yeah.
I've had a couple where it's either been blanked or it's gone nowhere.
I had one blanked, actually.
Which I get, actually. I don't, again, to your point, you've got to remember it's not for you.
Yeah.
It's as, you know what I mean?
You sort of hand it over at that point, you
Yes.
know? It's like, the thing about the steps that I got wrong as well, when you first get into recovery and you go on that bit of pink cloud and you're like, I need to say sorry to everybody, I need to do that right now. And then you think, there's no way I would have been prepared. Those steps are so important to do them in that order because when you then learn that actually it's for them to sit there and tell you how you made them feel.
Completely.
I do feel ready to hear that now. I feel ready to listen to that. There's no way, step 4, step 5, step 6, I wouldn't want to be ready for that. I'd be defensive, And I think it's a conversation for them to highlight how hard it was for them.
Do you get
It's my worst thing, constructive criticism.
I'm
much better.
I wasn't going to share this, but I will do.
Go on, come this far.
Yes. My amazing wife was told about Al-Anon.
Yes.
And she went to Al-Anon. For people that don't know what that is, it's for people that loved ones of those that are in addiction.
Yes.
And they work a 12-step process. And I hated that thought. I was in the room saying, I don't get why it's all about my addiction. I don't want more focus shined on me. I don't want to be on the naughty step any longer. And to be fair, I'm still not over that. And I still think a bit like that. The one bit of advice that got me over that hurdle was when your wife goes to Al-Anon, there'll be some people in there whose loved ones aren't sober, whose loved ones aren't working a 12-step program. So if the only way you can convince yourself that your wife is going is that in many ways you'll be getting a gold star compared to some of the other addicts, then lesser go. And that kind of got me into a better feeling.
I think as well, I'd look at that and think, God, you're really lucky that you have someone in your life that wants to go and
completely.
Because like
Yeah, very true. Very
some
true.
people don't talk about it at all.
Yeah, that's true.
And don't want to understand, or they do things in their own way, and then again with that you have to remember where they've come, how they've been taught to deal with things, and you have to be sympathetic towards that.
Yeah. Shall I tell you one more shocking story that I've forgotten?
Go on, let's end on a high.
This is it's
Or
very indicative of me.
Okay.
I signed a contract when I got back from rehab, which I do not mind and did not mind. It sounds quite draconian, but I think it was needed. It was 2 urine tests a week, and it was a hair test once a quarter. Contract to my wife, yes. And it was also, I wouldn't bring up stuff from the past in case I started getting obsessed.
Spiralling.
Exactly. So everything was going well.
Yeah.
And then I had my hair test. And I had my hair test after 3 months of getting back from rehab, and it said I was using cocaine. But I'm calmed down by everyone. I'm told, look, the urine tests are fine, don't worry. 6 months, still says I'm using cocaine. 9 months, still says... And when it got to 9 months, I had a conversation with my therapist, and I was, if you'll excuse the turn of phrase, pulling my hair out. I was so upset. And I was and he's done a bit of research. I'm a basket case, right? one, it might be to do with the fact that I perforated my septum.
Yeah.
That might be, apparently it takes longer to get out of the system. The other thing is, it just might be because I'm old and my hair doesn't grow very quickly. But I remember I was in tears to my therapist saying, this is so unfair, this is so unfair. And then I stopped myself and I suddenly had a moment's realisation. And it was this: if I was in active addiction, I bet I'd be stamping my feet, crying, saying it's so unfair, so unfair.
Yeah.
And it was so horrible.
Yeah.
Being seen, seeing myself like that
Yeah.
I am being a good boy.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky that, look, the readings are going down from the hair test, and apparently it is just slowly getting out of my system.
It's like something telling you that you're doing something wrong when you're not, though. And
it goes back to the injustice. It goes back to the...
But also in this situation, it's so hard to say that you're right because you've lied so many fucking times before.
Exactly.
It's infuriating.
It was so upsetting. So yeah.
So how long have you been sober now?
I think we'll be very close to 19 months.
Wow.
And there've been peaks and troughs, but broadly, it's been good. I mean, compared to where I was.
Yeah.
And there's been elements of denial about, did it start 2 years before? Did it start? You know what I mean? Yeah. I need to remember I've never had a healthy relationship with cocaine or any drugs. I'm lucky because I don't miss alcohol. I missed it briefly on a family holiday when the family were drinking pink wine.
The first of everything can always be a bit tricky.
Yes.
Christmas for me was mainly just because I was like, oh my God, this is not that fun.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Isn't it funny how everything in recovery is a milestone? First gig, first
Yeah,
festival,
it is.
first
birthday, first thing. But also, the thing I will say is, like, and this is why a lot of people who are in addiction hate sober people, is because you start to look at the world so differently. Society, the whole rat race of just this, you know, we had to pick one drug and so we've picked that one, and that just keeps them nicely in line with this kind of 9 to 5 weekend, and you do feel like you've unlocked life, like you've gone up a level, and that's not to be arrogant or like obtuse, but it's just like, I don't look down on people, like, I just think, oh my God, like, it's, you come out of it, you're like, it's so simple, but
yes, yeah, I'd agree.
You just have a different perspective, and I'm not being funny, you don't get sober to like remain the same. Do you know what I mean?
That's a very good point.
You don't.
And the other thing is, everybody could go on a 12-step process.
I say this all the time.
I know you do.
Anyone with mental health problems, just anyone who's looking for growth in their life.
Completely.
Because it's not about drinking drugs, it's the fact that you are insecure as shit.
Yes. Yeah.
Every single person I've had on this podcast has been riddled with insecurity.
Yeah, definitely.
They have a them problem.
Yeah.
Not a drink and drug problem.
Completely. Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's been so nice meeting you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Don't worry.
I'm so glad you came.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being a Class A person.
It's a pleasure.
Give me a
Thank
hug.
you.